3 spine-chilling true night drive horror tales. Sinister encounters that will haunt you forever. Sarah gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled strength, her heart racing. Each bump in the dark road felt like a warning. Ghost Hollow loomed ahead, a name that sent shivers down her spine. She was on the verge of something horrifying, a family trip that would pull the threads of her life apart. She cast a nervous glance at the empty back seat, her kids oblivious to the shadows creeping just outside the car's illumination. The moonlight painted ghastly outlines of decaying barns and forgotten houses, each one whispering memories of a past she tried so hard to forget. Her phone buzzed like a beehive in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. You should turn back. Ghost Hollow is dangerous. Goosebumps erupted on her arms, fear prickling at the back of her neck. She thought about ignoring it, chalking it up to spam, but then another notification chimed in. They know who you are. Don't trust anyone. Panic seeped into her core, twisting it tighter like a vice. The road twisted ahead, swallowed by shadows. Then a piercing scream slashed through the silence. It jolted her like an electric shock. What the hell was that? She whispered, her breath quickening as she instinctively pulled over, clouds of dust billowing around her tires. Emerging cautiously, she spotted a girl, not much older than her daughter, crouched behind a gnarled tree. The teen's eyes were wide with terror. Help me. There's something out there. Her voice trembled, fear dripping into Sarah's bones. Ghost Hollow isn't what you think it is. Adrenaline surged as they raced back to the car. We've got to go. But just as Sarah reached for the door, headlights swung toward them, bright and blinding. The local police arrived, their faces twisted in patronizing concern, dismissing the girl's harrowing warnings as mere teenage fear. She felt her stomach drop. The officers chuckled, underestimating them. Nothing to worry about, ma'am. Ghost Hollow is harmless. But she could sense the lurking danger, unseen yet palpably near. The night thickened around them, shadows shifting with malicious intent. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the cries of unseen creatures echoed through the trees. It was an unsettling sound, like laughter mixed with anguish. She clutched her chest, fighting for breath, while the moon drifted behind dark, swirling clouds, concealing her only source of light. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah's breath hitching. She scanned the trees, now full of dark shapes dancing just out of sight. This wasn't just a road trip. It was a descent into madness, each passing moment thick with terror. Drive, the girl hissed, her voice cracking, desperation spilling over. But before Sarah could react, a guttural roar ripped through the air, sending her scrambling for the ignition like a lifeline. Just then, the sight of those glowing eyes pierced through the brush, predatory, hungry. Panic gripped her as Sarah turned the key, the engine sputtering as if mocking her fear. The road to Ghost Hollow wouldn't just lead them to quaint charm but into a darkness that expected them. Shadows harboring secrets of a past too potent to escape. Would they survive the night? Or would they unearth horrors buried in the very heart of suburbia, waiting to ensnare them all? The unknown loomed closer, breaths quickening against icy dread. Every instinct screaming they needed to leave and fast. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life with a pulse of defiance. Sarah gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, and slammed her foot down on the gas. The tires screeched against the gravel as they jolted forward, leaving the chaos behind. She glanced in the rearview mirror, dread pooling in her stomach as the girl clung to the door, eyes wide and frantic. Why didn't you tell them? Sarah shouted, trying to drown out the pounding in her ears. They have to believe you. It's not that easy. The girl's voice cracked like glass. This place can't be understood. It changes what you see. Thick branches clawed at the sides of the car, shadows swirling with each burst of headlights. The road twisted on into darkness, and for a moment, relief washed over Sarah as they sprinted away from the unseen horror. But then the headlights dimmed, flickering, making the shadows dance even more in the periphery. "Do you see that?" the girl hissed, her voice dropping to a whisper. "What?" "Behind us." Casting a glance over her shoulder, Sarah squinted into the dark void. A dark figure, flowing like smoke, seemed to linger just beyond the reach of their headlights. Instinct screamed something wasn't right. "Faster," the girl urged, her voice tainted with fear. "We need to get away." But the faster Sarah drove, the more it seemed to close in, like a predator playing with its prey. With each twist and turn, the shadows grew, wrapping tightly around them, weaving a tangible sense of dread. The girl's eyes darted, scanning the edges of the road with frantic intensity. Suddenly, a flash of white caught Sarah's eye, a road sign, misted and rusting. "Ghost Hollow," it proclaimed, a sinister invitation hanging in the air. Sarah's heart sank. They were far from safe. "Did you see that?" the girl shouted. "See what?" "Those lights. They're all around us." Sarah struggled to keep steady. Her mind raced. Could they really be encircled? She flicked her gaze around, trying to identify the sources of those flickering shadows, but saw only the blurring lines of the trees rushing by. Then the phone rang again, vibrating violently against her thigh. She felt compelled to answer, as if answering was a choice forced upon her. "Sarah." The voice was distorted, warped and chilling. "You shouldn't have come here. They're watching." "What?" She nearly screamed, but she could hardly process the panic clawing up her throat. "Turn back. Turn back now." The line went dead, silence swallowed by the encroaching darkness. "Mom, what is it?" the girl asked, fear lacing her voice. "They know my name," Sarah whispered, trembling as the implications sank in. Her breath came quick, heart hammering louder than the engine. She fought the urge to pull away, to head for the first sign of safety, but the road was a void, the night obscure and menacing. The windows fogged, a chill settling upon them as if the very air outside held its breath. They were being suffocated by fear. "I can't see anything in front of me," she yelled, panic rising in her throat. "They're making it harder," the girl urged, clutching her arm. "Hold on." The roar returned, reverberating like a growl mixed with laughter, a sound etched in anticipation. It wasn't just a threat, it felt like a command, compelling her toward the abyss. And then came a crash, a sharp jolt, blinding light, and the world turned upside down. Glass shattered around them, and the shadow seemed to pounce. Silence followed, and then a whisper soft as silk. "Welcome to Ghost Hollow." What awaited them in the darkness that surrounded them? Would they find allies in this haunted abyss? Or were they just another lost pair in the horrors that lurked ahead? Awareness seeped back into Sarah's mind like ink in water. The car lay on its side, shattered glass reflecting the dim light of the moon filtering through the trees. The air smelled of gasoline and something metallic, tinged with dread. "Are you okay?" The girl's voice trembled, pulling Sarah from the fog of confusion. She turned to see the girl bruised but alive, a grimace contorting her features. The fog of fear thickened around them. "Yeah, I think so." Sarah pushed against the crumpled roof, fighting to find her footing. Panic tightened around her chest. "But we have to get out of here." A crackle echoed beyond the twisted metal, heartbeat pounding silence hanging like an impending storm. The girl nodded, eyes wide, darting from the shattered windshield back into the black void outside. "Listen, we need to move now." Scrambling awkwardly, they both pushed against the debris, finding an opening. As they tumbled into the cold night, every sense heightened. The air felt charged. Something lurked, just beyond sight. "Which way?" the girl panted, glancing around. Shadows swallowed the ground, trees standing like silent sentinels. "Anywhere but here." Sarah's voice cracked. She could feel it, the presence that watched, its invisible gaze crawling over her skin. They stumbled into the underbrush, pushing through ferns and thorny bushes that clawed at their arms. Each step felt heavier, as if the earth itself was trying to pull them back. Dread pooled in her stomach, growing thicker with every crack of a twig. "What's that?" the girl whispered urgently, pointing to a flickering light just ahead. Sarah squinted, breath hitching as shapes emerged in the gloom. Old buildings loomed just beyond, dilapidated as though frozen in time. They were caught in the weak halo of what looked like an old gas station. "What if they can help us?" the girl said, edging closer to the building. "Or what if they're part of it?" Sarah shot back, her instincts flaring. The gas station looked dead, no vehicles, no people. Only the flickering lights that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. They crept forward, the girl hesitating for a moment before slipping inside the broken door. Cold air gusted, and Sarah followed, heart beating a wild rhythm in her chest. The interior was dark and musty, walls adorned with faded photos. Each image felt alive with malice, whispering secrets of lives long lost. "Hello?" the girl called out, voice trembling as it echoed through the silence. "Is anyone here?" Silence answered, thick and heavy. Sarah's heart sank. She moved deeper inside, feeling the shadows cling tighter around her. The flickering lights barely illuminated the dust motes suspended in the air. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness. A low growl reverberated through the building, sending ice down Sarah's spine. She turned to the girl, whose face had drained of color. What was that? Fear pooled in her eyes, growing wider. "Just let us keep moving," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. They edged further into the back room, darkness closing in around them like an embrace. And then it hit them, the smell of decay, thick and suffocating. It wrapped around them, making their stomachs churn. A door creaked open at the far end, a sliver of light spilling through. "Should we?" the girl asked, her voice nearly breaking. They exchanged a fearful glance and nodded almost simultaneously, propelled onward by desperation. As they approached, a shadow flickered in the light, a form moving beyond the door, beckoning them with long, skeletal fingers. The urge to flee rose in Sarah, her instincts screaming, but before she could react, the door swung wide open. What awaited them beyond that threshold? Would they be consumed by the lurking shadows? Or would they find the way to face the horrors of Ghost Hollow? The door creaked, swinging inward with a reluctant groan. The light spilled out, revealing a narrow corridor lined with peeling wallpaper, stained and torn as if it had witnessed too many horrors. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. "Go back," she whispered, but the girl had already stepped forward, drawn by an unseen force. "Are you sure?" The girl turned, her voice trembling. But Sarah was rooted to the spot, cold dread wrapping around her heart. The flickering bulb overhead swung like a pendulum, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. Each flicker seemed to pulse with a life of its own, taunting them, daring them to enter. Behind them, the growl deepened, resonating like the promise of doom. It was close, too close. "Let us get out of here," Sarah said, panic lacing her voice. But the girl was already further in, past the threshold, curiosity piercing her fear. "Come on, it might just be empty." Sarah hesitated, feeling the tendrils of fear clawing at her insides. "We have to stick together." The girl glanced back, a half-smile trying to assure her that it would be fine, but failed to reach her eyes. Then she vanished into the shadows. Heart racing, Sarah followed, the corridor seeming to stretch unnaturally. Dark shapes writhed where the light couldn't penetrate. The air was stale and thick, heavy with the scent of mold and decay. "Do you see anything?" Sarah's voice echoed in the silence, a fragile thread tugging at her resolve. "What did you say?" The girl's voice came from farther down the hall that a chilling wind swept past Sarah, whispering something unintelligible that sent shivers down her spine. She clutched her arms to stave off the cold, hesitating for a moment. "Let us go back," she shouted, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a trapped animal. But as she reached the threshold of the corridor, something shifted behind her. In the gas station, the door they had entered moments ago slammed shut with a deafening thud, locking them in. "Sarah." The girl's voice was now tinged with fear, but it was accompanied by a horrible sound scraping, dragging, advancing from the shadows. "Get back!" Sarah screamed, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling as something slithered closer. "Over here." The girl's urgency drew Sarah's attention. She was pointing toward a door marked by a rusty sign that read "Employees Only." Together, they flung the door open, spilling into a small room illuminated by a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed irritably. Inside, the space was cluttered with old boxes, forgotten tools, and the overwhelming stench of rot. It felt wrong, contaminated as if it held the memories of lost souls. "What now?" the girl asked, desperation creeping into her voice. The sounds of movement grew louder behind them, a low, guttural growl mixed with the sound of nails scraping against the cement floor. Panic surged through Sarah. "We hide!" she shouted, pushing the girl toward an old storage closet in the corner. They squeezed in, barely fitting among the cobweb-covered tools. Pressing against the musty wall, Sarah held her breath, praying the door would keep whatever was hunting them at bay. The growling echoed, sounding almost playful now, as if their fear was entertainment. Moments stretched into eternity. Her heart thudded heavily, the sound drowning out everything else, threatening to give away their position. Then she heard it, a voice, raspy and low, calling out the girl's name, echoing through the room. It wasn't a growl anymore. It was singing. "Join us, it's safe, join us, Sarah," the girl whispered, her voice shaking. Sarah felt the cold creep back in, not from the air but from the thought that they might not escape this nightmare. What was waiting for them outside? And who or what was singing in that chilling lullaby? The shadows shifted, darker than before, gathering at the door. A silence fell over the room, thick and oppressive. Sarah could feel the girl trembling beside her. The song wrapped around them like a noose, tightening, suffocating. Why would something so sweet sound so terrifying? The rustling outside morphed into something melodic, an invitation swathed in malice. "Stay quiet," Sarah hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. She dared to peek through the narrow crack in the closet door. The flickering light cast shadows that wavered on the faces of the unseen faces that looked almost human, twisted and warped. They gathered at the edge of the light, their features distorted, eyes glinting like shards of glass. "Can you see them?" the girl asked, her breath hitching again. Sarah managed, watching in horror as more bodies emerged from the darkness. They crawled in grotesque motions, their limbs bending at unnatural angles, showering the floor with remnants of decaying flesh. The song grew louder, more insistent. "Join us, it's safe," it echoed, filling the room with an eerie sense of familiarity, making Sarah's blood run cold. "It's not safe," Sarah spat back, fury flooding her. "We'll die if we stay here." Suddenly, there was a loud crash, a metal object clattering against the floor. The growling turned into frustrated hisses, drowning out the lullaby. Something was angry, and it was close. "Move," she gasped, her heart racing. She grasped the girl by the arm, pulling her further back into the shadows of the closet. They were losing time. The door swung open slightly, and fingers like claws reached in, feeling for them, probing. "Now!" Sarah shouted, a desperate lunge propelling them both out of the closet. They stumbled into the labyrinth of boxes, toppled tools, and dirt-coated memories. "Where do we go?" the girl cried, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. The wailing voices surged, a chorus of anguish and seduction. "Join us, it's safe," the sound was everywhere, pressing into their minds, enticing and horrifying. "Through the other door." Sarah pointed toward a heavy steel door at the back of the room, overshadowed by a rusty metal filing cabinet. They rushed toward it, adrenaline propelling them forward. The growling returned, a beast caught off guard, balcony gasps echoing behind them. Tension crackled in the air as they reached the door. With trembling hands, Sarah yanked it open, revealing a dimly lit staircase spiraling down into darkness. They hesitated, the rusted steps leading into an abyss that whispered dangers only imagination can conjure. "Sarah, I don't want to," the girl stammered, glancing back at the chaos. But already, Something heavy was crashing through the room behind them, metal gnashing against metal, sending shivers down their spines. "Run!" Sarah shouted. They plunged down the stairs, the wooden steps creaking underfoot like dying breaths. With each step, the growling faded, but so did the light. A slick dampness clung to the air, stinking of decay as they descended into chilling darkness. "What if it's worse down there?" the girl asked, a knot of fear tightening in her gut. Sarah didn't reply, heart hammering against her chest. She guided them deeper, each turn taking them further into the unknown. Suddenly, the light from above flickered and went out, plunging them into utter blackness. A pulse of panic shot through Sarah as she fumbled for her friend's hand, squeezing tightly. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice trembling in the dark. Suddenly, from the void, two glowing eyes appeared, piercing the darkness. The growl erupted again, rising like a growling storm, filling the chamber. "We're not alone," Sarah breathed, filled with dread as the eyes inched closer. The chilling notion tightened around them. They had traded one horror for another, but what awaited them in this endless, suffocating night? What lay at the bottom of the stairs? Salvation or a fate worse than death? The air grew colder as Sarah and the girl stood frozen in the blackness, the palpable dread wrapping around them like a thick fog. The eyes glinted with malevolence, drawing nearer, swarming their senses with a suffocating weight. The growl morphed into a shriek, sending adrenaline surging through Sarah's veins. She gripped the girl's hand tighter, her heart hammering in time with the growing terror. "Back! Slow," she whispered, unsure if the creature could hear them or read their thoughts. But the eyes didn't vanish. They advanced, closing the distance. They bulged with an insatiable hunger, a vacuum of menace that filled the entire passage. Sarah could feel the girl quivering beside her, and it took everything in her to keep her own fear at bay. "Can we run?" the girl asked, her voice a trembling echo of fragility. "Not yet," Sarah replied, her mind racing. They had already traded safety for silence, and the weight of their desperate choices hung heavily above them. As something chilly brushed against Sarah's cheek, she swiped it away instinctively, only to realize it was a phantom breeze, charged with whispers. "Join us, it's safe." The grotesque melody twisted in her head, each word a cloud of shimmering malice. Something hairy and wet slithered across her hand. Nausea climbed her throat like a rising tide, and she recoiled, stumbling backward. The girl gasped, the sound carrying through the darkness like a beacon of fear. "Sarah, stay still," she ordered, and they stood frozen again, breaths shallow, listening. The growl intensified and shifted gears, turning into guttural laughter that reverberated within the eerie walls. In that moment of dreadful clarity, Sarah realized they needed to act. If they didn't move, whatever lurked in the shadows would claim them as its own. "We have to run. Now," she shouted above the mocking laughter. Sarah yanked the girl forward, sprinting through the darkness. The staircase spiraled down without end, each step echoing their frantic escape. Around them, a chorus of hissing and cries followed. The eyes, multiple pairs of them, lit the path with a haunting glow, spiraling like a cyclone as they drew closer. Behind them, the growling turned into a deafening roar of rage, desperate to reclaim what had eluded it. No longer feeling the walls of the stairway, Sarah felt she was plunging through a tunnel of suffocating despair. "Keep moving," she cried, her legs screaming in protest as they tore downward. The pulse of terror fueled their speed, but the girl stumbled, nearly falling. "I can't," she gasped. Sarah's heart dropped, the horrifying realization of vulnerability crashing over her like a wave. "Don't you dare stop," Sarah snapped, urgency igniting within her. As if fueled by the command, the girl pushed herself up again, her eyes wide and glistening with something close to frantic hope. Just then, a surge of light blinded them, radiating from an open door at the base of the staircase. Sarah didn't hesitate. She pulled the girl towards it. "There, go." They rushed through the doorway, spilling onto hard concrete. Sarah turned to see what they left behind. The growling creatures halted at the entrance, writhing and struggling around the threshold, creatures of darkness and shadows that sought to breach wherever they fled. But as they caught their breath, they noticed where they were inside a dimly lit storage room, filled with dusty crates and gone old ruins. Flickering bulbs struggled to illuminate faint shapes. "Where are we?" the girl panted. "I don't know." Panic flickered, threatening to muddle Sarah's thoughts. A sense of dread wrapped around her like a shroud. Groaning metal pipes dripped with condensation, each droplet echoing like a distant heartbeat. A sudden sound made her freeze soft, clinking like chains dragging across the floor. "Sarah? Shoo! Listen." The sound grew louder, rhythmic. It was coming closer. The air grew heavy with an otherworldly stench, a blend of mildew and something rotten. With a sudden, jarring crash, a section of the wall collapsed, revealing yet another shadow, its form towering and grotesque, shifting in and out of the half-light. They were not just running from horrors above. Something darker awaited them. "Sarah," the girl whispered, fear lacing her voice. What if it worse down here? The weight of the question hung between them. Something stirred behind that dark veil, rising, no salvation in sight, only what they had unwittingly unleashed, what was lurking behind those crumbled walls, poised to greet their shattered sanity. They were no longer just prisoners of their fears. They were stepping deeper into the abyss. A low, reverberating growl slithered from the shadows behind the crumbling wall. It wasn't just a sound. It felt like something alive, crawling toward them with intent. The air thickened with dread, every breath becoming a struggle as they waited for the unknown to materialize. "Get back," Sarah hissed, yanking the girl closer to her. The echoes of the chains grew louder, colliding against the grimy concrete with a deliberate cadence that matched the pounding of Sarah's heart. It burst through the debris, a mass of twisted limbs and glistening eyes, revealing teeth that dripped with a substance thick and black as tar. Cracking joints sent shards of dust into the air, decorating everything with a cloak of dread. Sarah's vision narrowed, focusing on the monstrous silhouette, while the girl squeezed her hand tighter, her knuckles whitening. Is it alive?" The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "Dead or alive, it doesn't matter," Sarah shot back, fear-stricken. "We have to move." They ducked behind a row of rusted crates, trying to remain silent. A fleeting glimpse of the creature showed it unfurling, splaying out like a grotesque flower blooming in darkness. Its eyes scanned the room, hunger radiating from its every pore, as if it could smell their fear. "Do you hear that?" The girl trembled. Sarah pressed a finger to her lips, her own breath ragged. The rhythmic chaining stopped abruptly. Silence hung, thick and oppressive. It was then that Sarah noticed the oppressive weight in the corners of the room, a gathering of shadows that seemed to pulse and shift, as if waiting for a cue to act. Just when she thought the terror couldn't escalate further, a disembodied voice sliced through the air, whispering secrets and horrors she couldn't comprehend. "Join us, become one with the dark." Those words clawed at her sanity. She flicked a glance back at the creature but found it was no longer alone. Other forms emerged from the shadows, pale and spectral, each one contorted in ways that mocked the living. "Sarah, we need to go," the girl urged, eyes wide with terror. "Which way?" A flicker of light caught Sarah's attention. In the far corner of the room, a door stood ajar, the faintest glimmer of hope shining through its crevices. The shadows swirled, seemingly sensing their intent. Sarah could almost feel their icy breath against her skin as they tightened their grip on the girls' hearts. "Run!" Sarah screamed, breaking the silence like glass shattering. They bolted from their hiding spot, the shadows screaming and clawing at them like desperate hands. The girl stumbled, but Sarah's grip wouldn't allow her to fall. They hurtled toward the door, praying it was an escape instead of another trap waiting to ensnare them. As they ran, the creature lunged. Sharp claws barely missed Sarah, ripping through the air with a sound like razor blades. They burst through the door, tumbling into an outside world. But it wasn't the safety of daylight they found. It was darkness, an endless expanse of night with no light, no direction, only the unsettling howl of wind that seemed alive, echoing back with sinister laughter. "We're not safe," the girl whimpered, her voice trembling in the pitch-black void. No, Sarah breathed, her pulse racing. She turned, gazing back at the door they had just come through, aware that the creatures were still lurking, waiting for their chance to finish what they had started. Beyond the door, the shadows coiled and twitched, preparing for another assault. But this time, the air held a promise beyond the abyss, whispers of what they might find, hidden within the grasp of night's eternal hunger. What are we going to do? The girl stammered, dread pooling in her voice. I don't know, Sarah confessed, the terror of uncertainty tightening around her gut. But we have to face it, whatever it is. In the heart of the darkness, with nothing but the echo of their own breaths guiding them, Sarah felt the eyes of the past watching. A chilling realization dawned on her: this terror was only the beginning. What horrors awaited them in this unknown abyss? With every step, the answer seemed to grow more haunting, but they had to face it head-on, or risk becoming part of the darkness forever. The wind howled like a creature in agony, swirling around them, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. Sarah gripped the girl's hand tighter, their knuckles white in the oppressive darkness. Each gust seemed to whisper dark secrets, urging them to retreat while shoving them deeper into the void. What if we just go back? The girl pleaded, fear painted across her face. And let it get us? Sarah snapped, glancing nervously at the door, now a mere outline in the thick blackness behind them. She knew they stood at the edge of a precipice, teetering between despair and an unknown terror. There was no going back. They took a cautious step forward, and the ground crunched beneath their feet. Gravel or bones, she couldn't tell. A cold sweat trickled down Sarah's spine, merging with the echoes of her racing heart. With each fresh step into the night, a sense of foreboding seeped into her soul. Where are we? The girl whispered, her head whirling around as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. I don't know, but keep moving, Sarah urged, her voice barely above a breath. The darkness pressed closer, its weight suffocating. A glimmer caught her eye, a flicker of movement ahead. Sarah squinted, squashing the creeping dread coiling inside her. She thought she saw silhouettes weaving through the shadows, dancing like marionettes on strings of darkness. Look, she whispered urgently, gesturing toward the unseen. The girl's eyes widened. What are they? Figures, Sarah replied tightly. They could be just illusions, products of the dark, or something worse. As they shuffled forward, the figures became clearer, fading in and out like smoke. They looked familiar, faces twisted in terror and pain. Sarah's stomach churned. Are they people? Are they trapped? The girl asked, stammering. Like us? The air grew colder as the moans of the figures filled the air, a cacophony of despair that wrapped around them like a blanket of ice. Each sound twisted and warped, dragging their sanity deeper into the abyss. We have to go. Now, Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging through her veins. Panic ignited like a flame, and they started to run. She could feel the specters watching them, hungry eyes drawn to their frantic flight. But the darkness shifted, waving like a tide, pushing back against their escape. The shadows crawled closer, reaching for them with skeletal fingers that brushed against their backs with icy touches. Faster, please, the girl wailed, her breath coming in desperate gasps. Sarah fought against the tide, leading them toward a narrow path that cut through the darkness. The cold was biting, gnawing at her skin, but hope flared in her chest at the sight of what looked like an opening ahead. Then, out of the dark, a voice slithered between them. You cannot leave, you belong to us. She looked back over her shoulder, heart stumbling at the sight of a new horror forming from the shadows, a figure with twisted limbs and empty sockets where eyes once shone. Its mouth stretched wide in a grin that promised nothing but despair. Keep moving, Sarah shouted again, and they barreled toward the opening, mind racing with the threat that loomed behind them. Just as they reached out for freedom, the ground trembled, splitting beneath them with a crack that rang like the tolling of a death knell. The darkness roared, reaching out, grasping for them with a might that felt palpable. The spectral figures wailed louder, their voices a chorus of horror. With one final push, they lunged toward the light, the shadows clawing at their ankles. And then darkness. They fell through, into a blinding bright, but it wasn't salvation. Crumbling buildings rose like tombstones in a nightmare. The chilling realization struck. They were not in the safety of daylight. They were in another realm, one filled with echoes of the past and flickering specters of what had already been lost. "Where are we?" the girl gasped, eyes wild with fear. "In hell," Sarah whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. There was no escape from this darkness. It had followed them here. From the corner of her eye, she saw shadowy figures gathering, whispering, and she knew in her bones they would never be alone again. "What's coming for us?" The girl shivered, and as shadows slowly surrounded them, Sarah felt it, the very essence of their former lives closing in. The darkness was patient, hungry, waiting for them to lose hope. What were they meant to face now? Would the darkness consume them, or would they find a way to fight? The answers loomed just out of reach. The ground beneath them throbbed with a deep, unsettling pulse, as if the very earth had a heartbeat. Sarah took a step back, her foot sliding on the damp surface, and she felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The shadows flickered closer, the twisted figures whispering in an unreadable tongue, their voices a tantalizing blend of rage and sorrow. They seemed to inch toward the girls, extending skeletal hands as if offering a welcome. "We can't stay here," she urged, yanking the girl by the wrist. "We must find a way out." "Where?" the girl breathed, eyes darting around frantically as the echoes of the past seeped into their reality. The shadows whispered louder, filling the air with a cloying dread, and each breath became heavier, thicker. Sarah scanned her surroundings. The crumbling buildings felt alive, sagging walls bending inwards, threatening to collapse. They stood tower-like over them, hunched like ancient sentinels guarding secrets better left undisturbed. "Look there." Sarah pointed to an archway in the far distance, barely visible through the thick fog clinging to the ground. "We can reach that." With trembling legs, they ran toward the archway. Each footfall met with a hollow thud that vibrated in her bones. The shadows dissolved into the mist, then regrouped, forming grotesque figures that loomed tall, faces contorted in anguish. With each new step, a murmur of voices began to rise, frantic, despairing, making it impossible to think, let alone scream. "Run!" Sarah shouted, pushing the girl ahead of her. Adrenaline surged. She felt it coursing through her veins. They dashed under the archway, the darkness cleaving behind them like a curtain drawn tight. Inside, the air was dead and still. The damp walls pulsed as if breathing, crackling with a static electricity that made Sarah's hair stand on end. In the gloom, she saw walls adorned with fading murals depicting scenes of unthinkable terror, people captured in a moment of horror, etched into the very fabric of this place. "Do you think they were real?" the girl whispered, shivering against a chill that had little to do with the temperature. "They might still be real," Sarah replied, her heart pounding. The artwork exuded an unsettling familiarity, each face reminding her of someone she had known, lost in the labyrinth of time. Without warning, the ground shuddered again, and a rumble reverberated through the corridor as shadows gathered once more behind them. Panic surged within her. They had no time to lose. Sarah glanced back, and her breath caught the grotesque figure stood not far from them, its mouth an endless yawning maw, stretching wider, teeth gleaming like daggers in the dark. "Keep going," she urged, panic fueling her voice as she pushed her body ahead, her feet pounding against the stone floor. They burst through another doorway, and what lay beyond sent her heart spiraling into her throat. That a vast chamber spread out before them, lit by a sickly glow emanating from what looked like countless eyes, glimmering in the darkness. The air smelled rancid, a putrid mix of decay and despair. "Sarah," the girl whispered, fear thick in her voice. "What are they?" Figures shimmered in the far shadows of the room, grotesque mirages stitched together from remnants of the past, tormented souls, frozen in their final moments, doomed to eternally repeat their pain. Those are the ones who never escaped," Sarah said, her heart sinking. "They're warning us to leave suddenly." The chamber filled with a cacophony of screams, sharp and piercing. The shadows lunged toward them, and Sarah felt icy fingers grabbing at her, pulling her back toward the nightmarish crowd. "No, fight it," she screamed, dragging the girl forward, but the shadows struggled against them, twisting and roaring, each scream a nail driving into her sanity. Then, a voice slithered through the chaos, so chilling it made her blood curdle. "You cannot run. You were brought here for a reason. This is your home now." Sarah's heart raced. She cast a desperate look around the room, searching for any other way out, when suddenly, the floor beneath her seemed to shift. "We can't be trapped. We want to be trapped," she shouted, the girl's eyes wide with terror. Above them, the ceiling began to crack, shadows spilling down like dark water. As tendrils of darkness slithered closer, Sarah could feel the walls closing in, ready to swallow them whole. "What do we do?" the girl cried, trembling. "Trust me," Sarah yelled, her voice rising above the chaos as she steeled herself against the encroaching darkness. In that moment, she spotted a flicker of light at the far end of the room, thin but persistent, a promise of escape. It flickered erratically, like hope in the depths of despair. "There," she pointed, and driven by the instinct to survive, she sprinted toward it, pulling the girl along. But would the light prove genuine or yet another trick of the darkness? With every step, she could feel the shadows curling around her like a living entity, hungry for fresh hope. What awaited them at the light? Would it guide them or lead to a greater darkness? The light pulsed ahead like a heartbeat, steady yet distant, urging Sarah and the girl forward. Each step took monumental effort, every inch gained feeling like a test against the encroaching shadows. The cacophony of anguished cries still echoed, but it was muffled now, as if they were emerging from a terrible dream. Panic clawed at her throat, but determination propelled her onward. "Keep going!" she shouted, pushing through the dread that threatened to swallow them whole. Their breathing quickened, the rhythm of fear syncing with the fluttering pulse. Shadows twisted around them, grappling like desperate hands trying to drag them back. The weight of the darkness bore down, whispers curling through the air. "You cannot escape, don't listen," Sarah urged, her voice thick with urgency as they raced toward the light, her heart pounding like a war drum. The creature they'd evaded loomed just behind, a shadowy mass that slithered across the foundation. As they neared the flickering brilliance, a cold laughter surged through the air, chilling her to the core. "You think you can flee?" it roared, the walls vibrating with its sinister presence. But Sarah pressed on, literally dragging the girl forward. The light brightened, illuminating the path ahead. It beckoned, a soft warmth wrapping around them like a protective embrace. Then, in a moment of heart-stopping clarity, they breached the threshold. They stumbled into a wide-open space, bathed in cold, stark sunlight. To their astonishment, the world shifted. They were back on the road, the map to Ghost Hollow lying innocently in sight. The car was intact on the gravel, the night seeming to recede behind them like an unpleasant memory. Sarah blinked, her heart racing like a wild stallion. "What just happened?" the girl asked, awe mingling with disbelief. "I don't know," Sarah whispered. Relief crashed over her like a tidal wave. They were back, but her bones still resonated with echoes of fear. The shadowy figures were no longer visible, but she felt the weight of their memories in the air, tangible reminders of what they had faced. But her relief was short-lived. A sharp buzzing interrupted her thoughts, her phone vibrating once more. She hesitated, dread pooling in her gut. Ignoring the past had never worked for her. The darkness had taught her the lesson too painfully. She glanced at the screen, yet another message from that unknown number. "You thought you escaped? Didn't you, Mom?" The girl's voice trembled, breaking the heavy silence of the moment. "What about the others? They may still be trapped. They need us," Sarah said urgently, uncertainty twisting in her gut. "We can't leave them behind." Fueled by an impulse to act, they jumped back into the car. Their hearts thudded in unison, a rhythm of tenacity and fear. Sarah turned the key and brought the engine to life, its roar echoing through the stillness, a spark of hope igniting. "Where do we go?" the girl asked, her hopeful gaze flickering nervously. "Back. I need to face it," Sarah said, their resolve solidifying like steel. "We can't just turn away." With a final glance at the sunlight, she merged back onto the path to Ghost Hollow. The road stretched endlessly ahead, full of shadows and uncertainty. Once more, the weight of doom loomed like a predatory shadow, but they faced it together. "Are you ready?" she asked the girl, a bond forming between them through fear and determination. "The darkness won't win," the girl said, her voice steady. Sarah smiled, their hearts defying the gravity of their fears. Together, they drove into the unknown, knowing true strength lay in the choice to confront the shadows. The night might close in, but this time they would not be alone. As they rounded the corner where darkness and light entwined, Sarah felt something shift within her, an acceptance of the terror ahead. Together they would embrace the unknown and fight, for the shadows would not take them without a fight. "Trust me," Sarah shouted, and with that battle cry, they plunged into the heart of Ghost Hollow, ready to confront whatever made a home in the darkness. Which would they find first? Redemption or ruin? The journey awaited. If you made it this far, there's something crucial you must do. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss out on more spine-chilling stories. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and support the channel. Let us make sure others feel this fear, too. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's keep the discussion alive. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. True fans take action. You need to subscribe now.